Montana Territory, August 1878. The sun was starting to dip low when Hunter Tarris spotted the flicker of movement in the trees just off the north slope of Mission Ridge. He reined in his buckskin gelding, eyes narrowing under the brim of his hat. It was not elk or fox. Too upright, too cautious. Someone was hiding. He dismounted slow, boots crunching over dry pine needles. His rifle stayed slung, but his hand hovered near it. Folks did not wander these woods without reason. He stepped around a fallen log, then froze. There, half shadowed by spruce branches, crouched a young woman. Her clothes were torn, her skin scratched and dirty like she had been running through the wild for days. But what caught him hardest were her eyes wide, wary, and full of something that looked like fear and pride tangled together. "Ma'am," Hunter said, voice steady. "I ain't here to hurt you." She didn't move. "You hurt?" he asked. She shook her head once, sharp, but her fingers tightened around her knees like she was bracing for a blow. "My name's Hunter Tarris," he said. "Rancher. I got a place down the slope. I can get you water. Food. I'm not going back," she whispered. He crouched, keeping a careful distance. "Not a skin, you two. What's your name?" A long pause. Then, hoarse, "Sierra Vallen." He gave her a moment. Let the silence settle between them. Then he stood and offered a hand. "You come with me, Sierra Vallen, or you stay right here. But I'm leaving a canteen and a blanket, either way." She stared at his hand like it was a trick. But something in his calm, quiet voice must have reached her, because after a long breath, Sierra pushed to her feet. She was thin, limping slightly, but she stood tall. "I'll come," she said. Back at his cabin, Hunter stoked the fire and handed her a bowl of stew. He didn't ask questions while she ate, just sat across from her, watching the way her hands trembled around the tin bowl. When she finally looked up, her voice was low. "You don't want to know what I'm running from? I reckon you'll tell me when you're ready." She looked away. "I'm not sure I ever will be." That night, he gave her the cot in the corner and bedded down near the hearth. In the dark, he heard her breathing shift, long pauses, sudden gasps. Nightmares. But she never made a sound. He didn't sleep much either. By the third day, Sierra had cleaned up, braided her dark hair back, and started helping around the cabin. She moved like someone used to doing things herself. She chopped kindling without being asked, cooked without a recipe. But she flinched every time a rider passed too close, and always kept her back to a wall. "You got anyone looking for you?" Hunter asked one morning as they worked side by side, mending fence wire. Her jaw tensed. "I hope not." He waited. "I was engaged," she said after a beat, "to a man named Byron Cole. He's dangerous. Real dangerous." Hunter did not speak, just tied off the wire and looked at her, plain and patient. "He killed my brother," she said. "Made it look like an accident. When I found out, he tried to trap me. Locked me up. Said no one would believe me. Said I was his now. You ran." "I fought," she said fiercely. "Then I ran." Hunter nodded slowly. "You ain't his." She looked at him, something breaking in her eyes. "You don't know him." "No," he said. "But I know you." Days passed. Then a week. Sierra stayed. One morning, Hunter found her standing barefoot on the porch, watching the sunrise light the peaks. He stepped up beside her, coffee in hand. "I never thought I'd feel safe again," she said quietly. "You are now." She turned to him. "Why are you doing this?" "Helping me." Hunter hesitated, then stepped closer. "Because when I found you in those woods, something in me changed. I don't know how to explain it. Just knew I couldn't let you go." Her eyes filled, but she blinked them clear. "I don't know how to be with someone." "I ain't asking you to be anything," he said. "Just stay with me." She reached out slowly, fingers brushing his. Warmth passed between them like a promise. 3 nights later, their peace cracked. Hunter returned from checking the herd to find Sierra gone. The cabin door hung open. Her shawl was on the floor. A trail of broken branches led into the woods. He ran. He found her near the river, pressed against a tree. A man stood over her, his voice cold and smug. "Byron Cole. You think you can just disappear?" Byron hissed. "You think some backwoods rancher can keep you from me?" Hunter stepped out of the brush, rifle raised. Back away from her. Byron turned, sneering. "You must be the fool she's been hiding behind." Hunter did not answer. He aimed lower. "You ain't walking away from this," Byron said. "You ain't either." Sierra's voice rang out then. "Hunter, do not kill him. He wants a noose. Not mercy." Hunter hesitated, then nodded. "Saddle's back that way. You walk." Byron lunged. Hunter fired. The bullet hit Byron's leg, spinning him to the ground. Hunter walked over and kicked his pistol into the river. "You're done." Sierra stepped to Hunter's side, her hand slipping into his. "I'm not afraid anymore." He looked at her, heart thudding. "You sure?" She nodded. "I want to stay with you. For real." His voice was soft. "You already are." They turned together, leaving the broken man behind, walking back toward the cabin, toward the life they would build hand in hand, hearts wide open. The morning after Byron Cole's capture brought a slow stillness to the valley, the kind that settled after something broke and hadn't quite mended yet. Hunter was up before the sun, splitting the silence with the soft rhythm of his axe against fur rounds. The wind carried the scent of cold pine. Behind him, the cabin door opened. Sierra stepped out, pulling on one of his old shirts over her dress. She stood for a moment, watching the mountains blush with early light. "I didn't sleep," she said. Hunter set down the axe. "Me neither." She walked to the chopping block and leaned against it, not quite touching him. "He'll stand trial?" Hunter nodded once. "Sheriff rode out last night. Took him to Missoula under guard. Said there's enough from what you told him to hold him for murder and attempted abduction. They'll wire word to where your brother's body was buried." Sierra swallowed hard and looked down at her hands. The knuckles were raw where she'd fought to survive. "I didn't think I'd feel anything once he was gone." "You do. More than I know how to hold." He didn't reach for her. Just waited. She looked up. "Your life before me, was it quiet?" He picked up a small log and set it on the block. "Mostly. Cows, fence mending, long winters. I talked to the fire more than folks." She smiled a little, though it didn't reach her eyes. "And now? Now you talk to the fire too." That pulled a breath of air from her, half a laugh. "I don't know how to be in the world after him. I thought I did once. I had plans. A teaching post in Helena. A room with lace curtains. I used to practice writing my name on the chalkboard. Still could. I don't want Helena anymore. I want here. If you'll have me." His answer was quiet. "You're already mine, Sierra." She let out a breath that trembled. "I want to learn how to be with someone without the fear." "You already are." She reached out and touched his forearm, fingers light and sure. "Can we go somewhere today?" "Not far. Just somewhere I haven't run through." He nodded. "There's a clearing east of the timber line. Indian paintbrush grows wild there. I'll pack a basket." They left by mid-morning, riding double on the gelding, her arms around his middle, her cheek resting against his back. The trail wound through thick woods, then opened into a meadow brushed gold in the sunlight. The grass was waist-high, swaying like water. Sierra slid down first, boots sinking into the soft earth. "I feel like I can breathe here," she said. Hunter spread a blanket on the ground and unpacked the bread, hard cheese, and boiled eggs he'd wrapped in cloth. She sat beside him, knees tucked beneath her. "I used to think I had to earn quiet," she said, as if peace was something given to good girls. "You don't owe anyone your calm." She turned toward him, voice soft. "What do you dream about, Hunter?" He looked out across the meadow. "Used to be land. Getting the south field cleared. Maybe another horse. Now it's you, sitting on that porch shelling peas, laughing at the way I burn cornbread." She blinked, her lips parting slightly. "You asked," he said. "I didn't expect that." He looked at her fully. "I don't say things unless they're true." She leaned over and kissed his shoulder, gentle and certain. "I want to stay here. With you. In this life. I'll build it with you." They lay back in the grass, her hand in his, clouds drifting slow above them. Later, when the sun began to dip and the meadow turned amber, they rode home in silence, the kind that held no fear, only the weight of something real beginning. That night, she curled beside him on the rug before the hearth. Her head rested against his chest. No nightmares came. Only the soft crackle of wood and the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek. By the time September laid its first frost across the tops of the fence posts, Sierra had begun planting the last of her saved seeds in the narrow strip of earth behind the cabin. She worked with her sleeves rolled to the elbow, the hem of her skirt pinned up to keep from dragging in the dirt. Hunter watched from the lean-to roof, where he was patching a loose shingle, his hammer paused mid-air. "You ever grown anything up here before?" she asked, not looking up. "Not much that didn't wither by July," he said. "But I never had help with a mind for it." She brushed soil from her fingers. "I used to keep a window box in my room. Parsley, mostly. My brother gave me the seeds." The wind picked up, lifting the edge of her braid. She stood, brushing the back of her hands on her apron. "There's a letter for you." he said, climbing down. Came with the mail peddler. Left it on the table. She walked inside without hurrying, but her shoulders had gone still. He stayed by the door. When she opened the envelope, her fingers slowed over the creases. It's from a woman named Mrs. Hartley, she said. She taught at the seminary I boarded with before Byron. Says she heard about his arrest. Wants to know if I'm unharmed. Hunter waited. She says they've offered me the teaching post again. Said they held it open, in case I ever came back. She folded the paper once, then again, hands steady. I think I needed to know I still had a place in the world before I could decide where I wanted to be. He crossed the room and stood beside her. I'm not taking it, she said. I just wanted to be asked. He nodded. I still want to teach, though? Maybe not in a schoolhouse. Maybe just here. Folks along the ridge have children, don't they? 6 families, he said. None with much schooling. She looked up at him. Could we clear the old chicken shed? It's dry inside. I could make do with planks and chalk. You'd have to put up with neighbor boys tracking mud in. I'll manage. That afternoon, they hauled out rusted tools and a broken barrel from the shed. She swept the floor clear of feathers and straw while he fitted new hinges to the window shutters. When the light slanted and golden by late day, she stepped back and looked at what they'd made. It's not Helena, she said. It's better. She leaned against the doorframe. I want to take your name, Hunter. He straightened from the workbench. You sure? I don't want to belong to anyone who ever tried to own me, but I'd like to belong with someone. And if you'll have me, I'd rather be Sierra Tarris. He took her hand, rough palm to smooth. We'll speak to the circuit preacher when he comes through next. She nodded slowly, eyes warming. That's soon enough. The wedding was quiet. Just the preacher, 2 neighbors as witnesses, and the wind rustling the aspens behind the cabin. She wore a dress she'd stitched from calico she bartered for in town. He wore his best shirt, pressed without a wrinkle. They stood beneath the eaves, hands clasped, and said not more than a few words. After, she cooked a stew with the last of the potatoes and wild onion, and they ate on the porch with their boots touching. He brought out a tin box, small and dinted. My mother's, he said. Wasn't much she had, but she kept this. Inside was a narrow band of silver, worn smooth by time. I'd have made you one myself, but I reckon she'd want you to have it. She said nothing, just slid it onto her finger. When the sun sank, he reached for her hand. There's nothing chasing us anymore, he said. Her voice was low. I know. They went inside together and shut the door against the night. By mid-October, the wind had started turning sharp through the trees, carrying the scent of snow not far off. Hunter had cleared the last of the summer's brush from the upper pasture, and Sierra's makeshift schoolhouse had begun to draw children from as far as the Miller homestead, 3 ridges east. Most came with patched boots and curious eyes, and they left with chalk dust on their sleeves and stories they repeated around supper tables. That morning, Hunter leaned against the doorway with a mug warming his hands, watching her sort through a bundle of slates and wool-wrapped readers freshly delivered by the peddler's wagon. You look like you're building a church, he said. She glanced over her shoulder. Maybe I am. You preaching something I ought to know about. Arithmetic and the alphabet, she said. Though one girl asked if spelling counted as a sin. He laughed, quiet and surprised, and she smiled without looking away from her work. By late afternoon, Hunter had ridden out to check the southern fence line. When he returned, he found a stranger leaning on the rail by the shed, holding his hat in both hands. Something I can help you with? Hunter asked, dismounting. The man turned, nervously adjusting the fit of his collar. Name's Thomas Vallen. Came from Bozeman. I heard my sister might be here. Hunter studied him. Mid-30s, trim coat, boots too clean for trail riding. Hair like Sierra's, only sun-faded. She's inside, Hunter said. I'll get her. Sierra stepped into the yard a moment later, her eyes fixed hard on the man. I thought you were dead, she said. Thomas stepped forward, then stopped. They told me you ran. Said you took money. That you were gone without a word. I buried you in my mind, she said. Everything after that got quieter. I didn't know what Byron had done till a year after, he said. He told me you were sick. Then he said you'd gone west with a trader. I tried looking, but there was nothing. You stopped writing. Her voice was thin. I didn't know where to send them. Hunter watched her shoulders shift, not closer to Thomas, but not away either. I came because word reached me about his arrest, Thomas said. I needed to know you were alive. I am, she said. And married now. Thomas looked at Hunter with something like apology in his eyes. You treat her well? I don't know how to do anything else, Hunter said. Thomas nodded. Then I'll stop asking questions. Sierra stepped closer, not touching her brother, but her voice gentled. "There's soup on the stove. You can stay the night." That evening, Thomas sat quietly at the far end of the table while Sierra told him about the girl she taught and the neighbor boy who could recite most of the Psalms backward. She spoke with her hands, rarely looking at him, but her voice no longer held the edge it had outside. Later, while she read by lamplight, Hunter stepped out to the porch. Thomas followed. "She's different," Thomas said, sliding his hands into his coat pockets. "Not softer, just steadier." Hunter nodded. "She's built something here." Thomas looked toward the tree line. "I'll ride out in the morning. There's nothing to fix between us, just things to leave be. She'll be glad you came, even if it doesn't look like it yet." Thomas hesitated, then said, "You got land. Plans." "But if she ever wants anything else, she won't," Hunter said. The next morning, Thomas left just after sunrise. Sierra watched from the window, her expression unreadable. "I'm all right," she said when Hunter came in from the barn. He didn't press, just kissed her temple and went to warm the kettle. That afternoon, Sierra stood outside the schoolhouse, watching the children chase each other in the brittle grass, their laughter sharp against the cold air. Hunter came up behind her, pressing a folded shawl into her arms. "I used to think survival was the end goal," she said. "But it's not." "No," he said. "It's the beginning." She leaned into his side, quiet and certain. And in the stillness of that moment, with winter pressing near and the worst behind them, they let the silence stretch not empty, but full of all the life they had yet to live. The first snow fell gentle and early, brushing the rooftops and fence rails with a fine powder that didn't quite stay. Sierra stood at the edge of the garden bed, her boots sinking slightly into the softening earth, watching as the last of the stems curled under the weight of the cold. She had left her gloves inside and her hands were red with chill, but she didn't move. Hunter came up with the oilkin for the barn hinges, noting the stillness in her shoulders. "You thinking of something or nothing at all?" he asked. "I was just wondering how long it'll take before everything's buried." He stepped beside her, careful not to crowd. "Not long, the way the air smells." She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "This time last year, I didn't think I'd live to see snow again." He rubbed his thumb across his palm, a habit when he didn't quite know what to say. "And now, I'm wondering if it's foolish to want more." He glanced at her. "What kind of more?" She looked out at the tree line. "Something small, maybe with your eyes and my stubbornness." His breath caught, just slightly. "You sure?" "I wouldn't say it if I weren't." He let that settle. The wind picked up, scattering pine needles across the porch steps. "I've thought about it," he said. "More than once." She turned to face him, chin lifted just a little. "Then maybe it's time we start clearing that back room." They spent the next few weeks preparing for winter in earnest. Extra hay was stacked high in the loft. Sierra stitched blankets from scraps and lined the cabin windows with thick cloth to keep out the worst of the wind. Hunter fashioned a cradle from spare cedar planks, sanding it smooth at the corners until it gleamed under his hands. December came hard, with storms that howled through the valley and left drifts knee-deep by morning. Still, the children came when they could, bundled in layers and trailing laughter behind them. Sierra taught with her sleeves rolled and her back straight, her voice carrying over the clatter of chalk and the scratch of slates. One afternoon, while Hunter was laying fresh straw in the stalls, he heard her singing softly in the schoolhouse. He paused at the open door, listening. It wasn't a song he knew, the kind women used to hum when they were alone, small and full of memory. She didn't see him there, and he didn't step inside. Just let the sound carry through him, quiet and sure. That night, she pressed his hand to the curve of her belly and whispered, "I think it's real now." He didn't speak, only pulled her close and rested his forehead against hers. By spring, the thaw had begun. Their child came with the first bloom of crocus along the ridge line, a girl with dark hair and lungs strong enough to wake the birds. Sierra bore down with quiet grit, her fingers laced with Hunter's as the midwife worked beside her. When the child let out her first cry, Sierra laughed through tears and said, "She's louder than both of us combined." Hunter held the baby with hands that had once broken wild horses and now cradled something lighter and heavier than anything he'd ever known. "We'll call her Miriam," he said. "After your grandmother." Sierra nodded, too full to speak. They raised her with the rhythms of the land. Mornings began with coffee and the hum of Sierra's voice over the hearth. Afternoons brought lessons under the cottonwoods, Miriam tucked in a sling against Sierra's chest. Evenings ended with Hunter rocking the cradle while Sierra stitched by lamplight, the room warm with quiet contentment. Neighbors came and went, some bringing preserves, others offering help with fence posts or mending. Word of Sierra's school spread across the ridges, and by the second year, they'd added a second bench and a shelf of borrowed books. No one asked about Helena again. One summer evening, Hunter and Sierra sat on the porch as the sun dipped low, Miriam asleep between them on a quilt Sierra had pieced from fabric left behind by women who came before and never stayed. Hunter reached for Sierra's hand. "You ever miss the life you thought you'd have?" She looked out at the fields, the hills beyond, the soft curve of their daughter's cheek. "I never imagined this one, but I wouldn't trade it. You gave me more than I knew to want." She leaned her head against his shoulder and closed her eyes. "And you gave me the kind of love that doesn't ask for anything in return." He kissed the top of her head. "It's yours, always." The light faded, and the first stars came out, sharp and clear in the Montana sky. The wind had gone still, and the land held its breath, wrapped in the kind of peace that only comes after everything hard has already been lived through. And in that quiet, with the world asleep around them, Hunter and Sierra sat hand in hand, their daughter safe between them, and knew that they had made something lasting, something whole, something that would carry through every season yet to come.